Welcome back. Now for the news in detail, we begin from Afghanistan, where the Taliban have claimed responsibility for the killing of 20 foreign troops and Afghan secret security personnel in a blast in the capital, Kabul. In contrast, the Interior Ministry says only 10 people were killed and 42 others injured. NATO says one Romanian and one US soldier were among the killed. The explosion shook Shashi Tharoor, a heavily fortified area adjacent to Kabul's diplomatic green zone, which hosts many important complexes. United States Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has refused to sign a peace deal between Washington and the Taliban. The Afghan government says it is concerned by the peace deal and wants more clarification. Pompeo said he will be a signatory to the deal after all parties, including the US president, sign it. State Department spokesperson Morgan Ortega said there is no agreement to sign yet. The Taliban-US deal pledges to withdraw around 5,500 American troops from Afghanistan in 20 weeks. Meanwhile, Iran has announced it will end its limits on the development of uranium centrifuges after the United States refused a sanctions waiver. This is the third step in the scaling back of the country's commitments to the 2015 nuclear deal. Meanwhile, the EU urged Iran to stay committed to the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. In a televised address, President Hassan Rouhani said Tehran will continue negotiations to save the deal. Iran agreed under the 2015 multilateral deal to limit its nuclear program. Rouhani said Iran will negotiate with France as EU representative in a 5-month framework. Earlier, the United States blacklisted a shipping network it says is run by Iran's Revolutionary Guards. The U.S. Treasury Department imposed sanctions on 16 entities, 10 people and 11 ships. The department has accused Iran's Quds of force of selling millions of barrels of oil to benefit Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. The U.S. has offered millions of dollars to the Indian captain of an Iranian oil tanker suspected of heading to Syria. State Department official Brian Hook says the money was offered to convince the vessel's captain to steer it to a country where it could be seized. The State Department said the U.S. has contacted several ship captains, warning them of consequences for supporting terrorist organizations. Reacting to the news, Iran's Foreign Minister Javad Zarif said, having failed at piracy, the U.S. has resorted to outright blackmail. Hitting back, Washington accused Zarif of blackmail with his call for $15 billion from EU powers for Iran's future oil sales. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan says it is unacceptable for nuclear-armed states to prevent Ankara from developing its own atomic weapons. But Erdogan did not specify whether Turkey plans to develop its own nuclear arsenal. Talking to his party members in Sivas, he said all developed nations have nuclear weapons. Erdogan hinted that he wants the same nuclear guaranteed protection for Turkey that Israel has. Turkey signed the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty in 1980. It is also a signatory of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, which outlaws any nuclear detonation for any purpose. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has suffered a double defeat in the Commons after MPs rejected his attempt to force an early election. Earlier, Johnson lost a key vote to opposition lawmakers who want to block a no-deal Brexit. More in this report.
With the fate of the UK's exit from the EU hanging in the balance, Prime Minister Boris Johnson is in the midst of a major parliamentary showdown. His bid to take Britain out of the EU by October 31st, with or without a deal, has divided the country. The government's rebel MPs and the opposition have joined forces to block a Brexit without a divorce deal. They voted in favour of the bill to delay Brexit until January 2020.
The ayes to the right, 298. The noes to the left, 56.
Retaliating, Johnson immediately pushed for a motion to hold a snap general election on October 15th, but he failed to win the necessary two-thirds majority, only mustering 298 of the 434 votes required.
The ayes to the right, 298, the noes to the left, 56. So the ayes have it, but the House will be aware that the motion has not obtained the majority required under the Fixed Term Parliaments Act 2011. Unlock.
After the ballot went badly, Johnson chided opposition Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn before MPs.
I can only speculate as to the reasons behind his hesitation. Mr. Speaker, the obvious conclusion is, I'm afraid, that he does not think he will win.
The government said the bill to stop a no-deal Brexit will complete its passage through the Lords on Friday. It also announced that EU nationals who arrive in the UK before the end of 2020 can stay until December 2023.
EU Brexit negotiator Michel Barnier says the bloc will remain vigilant, united and calm in the Brexit situation. Britain's new negotiator David Frost was also in Brussels for talks with EU officials. After discussing the situation with EU ambassadors, Barnier met the EU Parliament's Brexit steering group. British and EU diplomats say there is no immediate prospect of negotiations on the withdrawal deal. Earlier, the European Union said it sees no alternative to the Irish backstop in any Brexit agreement. European Commission spokesperson Mina Andreev said the backstop is the only solution to safeguard the Irish peace accord. Russia has proposed a new G7-style forum featuring Turkey, India and China. President Vladimir Putin announced the idea at the Eastern Economic Forum in Vladivostok. The Russian president also announced his country would resume the production of missiles banned under the INF Treaty. He said Moscow will not deploy the missiles unless the United States does so first. Putin also expressed concern over the U.S. plan to deploying missiles in Japan and South Korea. Meanwhile, Moscow says the EU's extension of sanctions against Russia is devastating and destructive for the bloc itself. Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova says the curbs are damaging for a post-Brexit Europe. Zakharova said the bloc chose to extend the sanctions despite pressure from Washington. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov also called out the EU for extending sanctions against Moscow. In the meantime, Lavrov said the US withdrawal from the INF Treaty has shaded the future of the New START Pact. He said Moscow and the US are more responsible for global security than other countries. Moving on, Pakistan's envoy Tehmina Janjua has briefed UNHRC High Commissioner Michelle Bachelet about human rights violations in occupied Kashmir. Briefing members of the council, Janjua highlighted the humanitarian emergency in occupied Kashmir after India's illegal annexation of the valley. Meanwhile, High Commissioner Nafeez Zakaria held a closed meeting in London with a large number of UK parliamentarians. The parliamentarians agreed to continue working for the alleviation of suffering faced by Kashmiris because of New Delhi's lockdown. Lawmakers acknowledge Kashmir is an internationally recognized dispute and await implementation of relevant UNSC resolutions. India's curfew and communications blackout in the valley has entered its 32nd day. Now, Amnesty International has launched a global campaign against India's communication blackout in Indian-occupied Kashmir. The body says the draconian communication blackout in the Indian-occupied valley is an outrageous assault on Kashmiri's civil liberties. The body's head in India, Akar Patel, said the blackout is now a month old and cannot be prolonged by India any further. He said the clampdown has impacted the emotional, mental and physical well-being of local people. The viral Let Kashmir Speak campaign will highlight the ongoing communications blackout. Indian Congress leader Shashi Tharoor has criticized his own government, saying the Kashmir crisis is a travesty of Indian democracy. Speaking in New Delhi, Tharoor said the ruling party stripped the valley of its autonomy without Kashmiri's consent. Tharoor said the BJP government just sought the consent of the Kashmir governor, who is New Delhi's appointee. Meanwhile, India's Supreme Court will hear a petition filed against the arrest of a leftist political leader in occupied Kashmir. On his return from Srinagar, Sitaram Yeshuri was arrested after he said New Delhi was lying about the situation in the valley. In the meantime, Indian occupation forces abducted over a dozen people in a village in southern Kashmir. Local media reports the civilians were picked up in a midnight raid and tortured for over an hour. Moving on, the United States and China have agreed to resume negotiations in mid-October to end their trade war. The U.S. Treasury Department says Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer and Treasury Secretary Stephen Mnuchin spoke with Chinese Premier Liu over the phone. China's central bank governor Yi Gang also took part in China's Commerce Ministry, says the ministerial-level talks will be held in Washington. It says trade teams from the two countries will hold consultations in mid-September before the October talks. Italy's new pro-European cabinet has been sworn in by President Sergio Mattarella. The list of 21 new cabinet ministers for Giuseppe Conte's second stint as prime minister was approved by Mattarella yesterday. 10 ministers are from the Five-Star Movement, while 9 are from the centre-left Democratic Party. PD's leader Luigi Di Maio was named as foreign minister. The post of economy minister went to the PD's Roberto. The key position of interior minister was handed to a technocrat who is not affiliated with any party. Conte hopes the new cabinet will help build a better Italy and improve ties with its European Union. The death toll from Hurricane Dorian has climbed to 20 in the Abaco Island in the northern Bahamas. Meanwhile, the slow-moving storm has returned to Category 3 status as it heads for the U.S. state of South Carolina. Bahamas Prime Minister Hubert Minnis has warned the death toll could rise. Minnis says the storm is one of the greatest national crises in Bahamas history. The National Hurricane Center says Dorian had wind speeds of 185 kilometers per hour. The devastating gusts made it a Category 3 storm on the 5-level scale. U.S. President Donald Trump said the damage could have been worse if the storm had stayed on its original track. More news to follow after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Now, the number of measles cases in New Zealand have reached 1,000 in 2019. Medics say people could die if the disease continues to spread. The Ministry of Health says a total of 1,051 cases have been registered in 9 months. The outbreak is largely concentrated around Auckland with 877 confirmed cases. Measles targets children in particular, causing disability or even death. The World Health Organization's officials say the growing number of cases in developed countries with high vaccination rates is alarming.
The reason is that even in a national setting, where coverage is very high at the national level, there can be small pockets, communities of people where the vaccination coverage in that particular community is low and insufficient to prevent an outbreak.
Well, the U.S. State Department has issued a travel warning to its citizens because of the outbreak in New Zealand. Now, a district judge in Virginia has ruled the U.S. terrorist watch list violates the constitutional rights of individuals. The FBI list includes 4,600 Americans among over 1 million people as of June 2017. District Judge Anthony Tranga has asked for additional legal briefs before deciding what remedy to impose. In his 31-page ruling, the Virginia judge wrote the case presents unsettled issues. The ruling grants summary judgment to nearly 24 Muslims who had challenged the list. In a statement, the Council on American Islamic Relations described the decision as a victory. The plaintiffs say the process for adding names is overly broad and riddled with errors. The FBI's terrorist screening database is shared with various U.S. departments and foreign governments. Now, Facebook has listed over 400 million phone numbers online in its latest privacy lapse. An exposed server stored 419 million records on users across several databases, including 133 million US accounts. Facebook has confirmed parts of the report but downplayed the extent of the exposure. It said the number of accounts so far confirmed was around half of the reported 419 million. The social media giant says many of the entries were duplicates and that the data was old. Following the 2018 Cambridge Analytica scandal, the company disabled a feature allowing users to search the platform by phone numbers. In Bangladesh, Rohingya refugees say they are concerned by the suspension of mobile phone services in refugee camps near Cox's Bazar. The government suspended mobile data for the 1 million Rohingyas living in the camps because of security concerns. More in this report.
Tensions have been running high in the Rohingya sites since last week, when a local leader of Bangladesh's ruling party was allegedly killed by refugees. Later, at least 4 Rohingya were shot dead by police. The Telecom Regulatory Authority ordered mobile phone operators to block data services to those areas. Voicing his anger, Rohingya shopkeeper Habibullah says refugees have lost a vital connection to the outside world.
If mobile phones are disconnected, it will be a big problem for us. We will not be able to talk with our relatives, and we have relatives in other countries. I have brothers living in Saudi Arabia and Dubai. If we cannot call them, how will we get news about our relatives?
More than 40 non-governmental organizations working with Rohingya refugees have also been ordered to end operations. Tensions have been running high
in the Nigerian city of Lagos. Children from impoverished slums have taken to playing chess. For them, it is not about losing or winning. It's about laughter-filled streets and a respite from the harsh realities of poverty. More in this report.
Chess, a board game famous for its reliance on strategy, has a tiny but avid following in Nigeria. Crowds of children bustle around chessboards in the neighborhoods of Lagos, figuring out their next move as part of a community project. Dozens of matches are played simultaneously as participants master a game often considered out of reach of the masses. The club's goal is to provide a space to play and learn the game for many who are not in school and work to support their families.
They're learning soft skills from playing chess, skills like critical thinking, like good communication skills, creativity. They're learning how to think strategically. They're learning problem-solving skills, and these skills are skills that will be relevant throughout their existence.
Held beneath a makeshift tent in the courtyard of a local bar, in less than a year, the program has already drawn an enthusiastic following. The club already boasts several success stories. The attention the project has generated has helped shine a spotlight on more marginalized children.
Make people to think fast, to understand something quickly.
Videos of the budding chess masters shared on Instagram show these children are like any other anywhere in the world. According to the FIDE World Chess Federation rating, the West African nation ranks 88th out of 186 countries.
Chinese film Sinogene has given a British short-haired cat its 10th life. Garlic is the Beijing-based company's first successful genetically modified cat.
China has a growing pet market and a huge appetite amongst their owners for spending. According to a report, pet-related spending reached $23.7 billion in 2018. Experts at Pet Fair Asia think the market for pet cloning in Asia is also setting to skyrocket. 7 months after Huang Yu's pet cat Garlic died, the short hair was cloned by Chinese firm Sinogene.
I'm so excited to see garlic after such a long time. I don't know how to describe the feeling.
The company has cloned more than 40 pet dogs. The procedure costs a hefty $53,000, while the price for a cat comes in at $35,000. Despite the high price tag, not all clients are high earners.
Many customers are young people who have just graduated. They choose to clone their pets and bear the financial burden. It does not have a strong relationship with the income level.
Wang hopes the personality of the new garlic is as similar to his old white and gray cat as is his appearance.
The similarity of personality between cloned pets and original ones are better than their appearance because the formation of personality is largely related to genetics. The personality may change a little with external factors like environment, but there are still many similarities.
The country's scientists have high ambitions for their coming cloning challenge. They're working on the theory that if cats can be cloned, so can pandas.
And global stocks have risen over optimism over a resumption of trade talks between the United States and China in October. China stocks ended higher, boosted by hopes of Beijing freeing up the amount of cash banks must keep as reserves to shore up the economy. European stocks hit one-month high with the pan-European stock 600 index rising over 0.5%. France's CAC 40 index jumped close to 1% to hit a more than one-month high. Germany's DAX2 rose 0.85%, while London's FTSE 100 traded roughly flat. Australia's ASX 200 gained 1% on trade optimism. Now let's have a look at the weather updates. With the weather update, we come to the end of this bulletin. For more news and updates, keep watching Indus News.